This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets podcast, episode number 183, titled Freight Market Update, subtitled How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Market. I'm your host, Craig. Over there, he's Chris. How's it going, Chris?
It's going well. How you doing?
I'm all right. I went to the gym today. So,
wow, good for you.
I did yoga today.
Wow.
So how's it going?
All the steps and the gym and yoga? You're like a fitness guru.
I am. Hey, let's just say it's a good thing that this video podcast is shot from the chest up, because I am not a fitness guru. Let me assure you.
That, and I mean, I think you're still in your work, because you've been working out essentially all day. You're still in your workout clothes.
That's right. That's right. You're, nope, not even wearing pants, because it's podcasting. There's no pants in podcasting. All right, Chris, we are going to be talking about the freight market. This is something that you've been kind of zeroed in on in a lot of our recent conversations. And so now you want to expand on that, talk about how people should be thinking, or how you would suggest people think about the freight market. But we're going to get there in just a moment. First, I'm going to remind everybody to go to haulinassetsllc.com. You can get show notes there. You can also comment there. So if you ever want us to address something, or if I make a horrific mistake, like I say gas.
If
right?
Or when?
You know what?
I'm on one today, aren't I?
Let's see. You can also, by the way, you can also comment and rate and all that. And we would greatly appreciate it if you did that on Spotify or Apple iTunes. Apple Podcasts is what it's called. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, rate, comment. Those really help. It helps others find the show. And so I know you hear this on every show you listen to. And so I apologize for joining that chorus, except not really, because it really does help us out, boosts us in the algorithm. So we appreciate you listening. But if you would like to, pay it back and pay it forward for this free content you're getting, then just go leave a little like and a comment and a 5-star rating.
Yeah, right? Please do.
And then lastly, of course, motorcarrierhq.com, which is our forever sponsor of the show. So go to motorcarrierhq.com for the tools, tips, and people you need to make the jump from employee driver to owner operator. All right, Chris, I know you've got stories from the road, because you told me you got a judge to reverse a citation.
I did. Surprise, surprise. I didn't think this was going to happen. I kind of fought it a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, if you don't travel through Oregon often, you might not know this, but Oregon is the only state in the country that is not part of the IFTA agreement, the International Fuel Tax Agreement. You don't pay IFTA taxes when you go through the state of Oregon, and you think, oh, that's great, you don't have to pay IFTA in Oregon. Well, no, it's not so great, because instead of doing that, they charge you a weight distance tax, which is, I should have looked this up, I didn't, but I think it's 24 cents a mile, roughly, something like that, which is way more expensive.
That's insanity.
It's insane than what you pay when you go through, when you pay fuel tax in any other state. It's crazy. So this is a mistake on our part. If you remember, a few months ago, we had a truck breakdown with a transmission issue that turned into a nightmare because the shop took forever to get it fixed. Mm-hmm. We ended up renting a truck, and so that we could complete the load the truck was on and get a new load. And that load happened to take us from, I think it was the Kansas City, it was Midwest somewhere, into Oregon and back. And I should have thought about this, but I did not. So we have a Oregon weight distance tax license. We go in there enough that we've got our own license, so we don't have to get a single trip permit every time we go through the state, which is the other option. We just file a quarterly report that reports how many miles we've driven in Oregon, and we pay that fee.
Yeah. Have I mentioned lately how much I love Oregon? What a beautiful state, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it is.
It is very beautiful, but they take advantage of the truckers. And so anyway, we the thing is that license is tied to each truck and to each truck's license plate. So I'm not even thinking that we've got this rental truck. It's not tied to our Oregon account. And so what you have to do in that situation is get a single trip permit for every time that truck goes into Oregon. I did not do that. Our truck got stopped at a port. They stopped it because it didn't have a Oregon permit tied to its license plate. And our driver ended up getting a $440 citation for not having an Oregon permit. And then I went right after that happened, bought the trip permit for that truck, but still had to address the $440.
How much was the trip permit? If just by itself,
I can't remember exactly.
Less than $400.
Less than $400, but still a significant amount. I want to say $250, $300, something like that.
All right.
Anyway, so you can just go pay the fine. You can call the court. So I call the court and explain the situation to the court worker person. And the court worker person says, okay, if you can show that you actually ended up buying the permit after, I can get the fine reduced to $220. And I'm like, okay, that's better than nothing. Let's go that route. And then I kind of keep talking to her a little bit, and she's like, or you can try to fight it, but it's probably not going to do anything. And you can appear in court. And I'm like, do I have to physically be there to appear in court? And she's like, no.
They'll Zoom do it call over the judge.
Phone. Yep. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. And so I go that route. I fill out a form, and they set a court date for like a month or two down the road.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't have to worry about this till then. Well, like 2 days later, a judge calls me, and she like kind of goes through the same spill. Well, I can reduce it by half, but that's as far as we're going to reduce it. And you can pay that, or you can, and I'm like, do I have to pay that now? Or what about my court date? And she's like, well, we can just take care of it now. You don't have to worry about the court date. I'm like, but I'm not going to tell you this, but if you do the court date, it's just going to be the same thing. Like, and I'm like, okay. So I actually kind of, one way or another, this judge and I kind of develop a rapport and kind of start shooting the breeze a little bit. And I start venting a little bit about Oregon. And she's a local municipality judge, right? She's just enforcing the laws of the state. She knows nothing about how Oregon charges. About IFTA and all this. All that kind of stuff. And she's curious about it. And you're probably, not to toot my own horn, but you're probably never going to run into a truck driver or a small trucking company owner that understands IFTA, that understands the Oregon permit as well as I do. And so like we kind of start going into it and take a deep dive into it. And I never knew that. And she's like, you really pay 23 cents a mile for every mile you drive in Oregon? I'm like, yeah, we do. And I kind of walk through in this permit, this one trip, this is how much it's costing me just to operate my truck in Oregon. And I go through some of the cheaper states and like how much it would cost me to drive the same number of miles paying IFTA tax in other states. And like, so we had probably like a 30 or 45 minute conversation over the phone. And, to kind of get to the end of this story. I was waiting for you to say, cut a long story short. Make a long story short. She's all like, I cannot believe this. That's crazy. I've never done this before. I'm just going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. I'm like, really? She's like, yep. So we ended up not having to pay that citation. She was very kind to us. There you go. I don't think that's going to happen to everybody. So learn from my mistake that luckily only ended up costing me a pretty long, several phone calls, maybe a couple hours worth of work, getting it all resolved. But if you rent a truck, don't forget you need to get an Oregon permit, even if you have the annual Oregon license. Oh man, you know what, Chris? This is why I'm glad that of the two small business owners in this room, there's only one that doesn't have any employees, and I'm glad to be that one. The stuff that. The amount of complexity you have to manage is it gets complex at times. Yeah. That's why sometimes things like this just kind of fall through the cracks. You don't think about it. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Chris, let's get to our main topic, which is the freight market. Like I said, this is something you've been talking about a lot lately. Now,
you've mentioned that as we go through this topic, you're going to start off pretty negative.
Yep.
Which, color me shocked. We're talking about the freight market, and Chris is going to start negative. But, hang in there, dear listeners, right? Because, Chris, you're going to eventually look at some of the more positive aspects of what's going on and what you're hoping for, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing some more positive signs. So there's a little bit of teaser for the end. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But to kind of start this whole conversation out, like you mentioned, it is something that we've talked a lot about, but we've never really taken a deep dive into it. And so I want to talk about how supply and demand works in the freight market, and explain that, and then kind of explain what has gotten us to where we are right now, and then talk a little bit about where I think we're headed.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's start. Where are we today? You've talked about this, like I said, many times in the past, but go ahead and just lay the groundwork for anybody who missed those episodes. Where are we at today? What's the freight market looking like?
So we're going to throw up a graphic on the screen that kind of is a visualization of what I'm going to talk about here in the next few minutes concerning supply and demand in the freight market. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see that, or if you're watching on social media, you're going to see that. But you can also go into the show notes if you want to pause the podcast and you've got the ability to pull up the show notes. You'll be able to see the graph there as well.
Yeah, but we'll try to explain it, right? Yeah. So if you're listening on the road, don't worry.
That's fine.
Keep going, and you can check it out later, but we'll do our best.
Yep. So if you're looking at the graph right now, and we're going to kind of take our step back into junior high school math and remembering our algebra and our work with graphs and algebra and geometry. You've got a y-axis that runs up and down.
Yep.
And that y-axis is going to be freight rates.
Sure.
So as you go up the y-axis on the left side of the graph, you've got freight rates increasing.
Sure.
Then on the x-axis on the bottom, going from left to right, so increasing from left to right, you're going to have freight volume, and it's also going to represent the number of trucks on the road.
Okay, so volume of both freight and trucks,
yep,
versus the rate.
Yes,
the freight rate.
That's what you're kind of comparing there. So you're going to see two lines on the graph. One that represents that freight volume, which is demand, and then you're going to have the one, and that's in green, and then you're going to have one in yellow that represents the number of trucks, and that's really the supply.
Oh, okay. So people want stuff, and truckers take them the stuff,
that. And that's the freight volume.
So that's the supply and demand.
Yeah,
all right, got it.
That's the demand piece. So if you look as the freight volume, or that green line, increases as it goes.
As demand increases,
freight rates go up.
Right.
Because you've got more people asking for more goods, and it causes the freight rates to go up.
Right. This is Econ 101, right? 101. Supply and demand.
Yep. But then you also have, with the number of trucks on the road, something that can kind of happen inversely. When the number of trucks decreases, so you have fewer trucks on the road hauling that freight, it also it causes freight rates to go down. So when the number of trucks go up, the freight rates go down, or vice versa. When the number of trucks decreases, freight rates go up. So you kind of see those two arrows can intersect each other. They kind of go in opposite directions.
You have two different supply and demand situations here, right? Yeah. We're not talking about just one supply and demand. You have supply of trucks and freight.
Yep.
You have supply of trucks and supply of freight, and demand for both of those intersecting.
So you've got both of those players can affect things at the same time. So you take, for example, if you've got freight rates, if you've got the freight volume increasing, then rates are going to go up. If you have freight volume decreasing, then you're going to have freight rates go down, and vice versa with trucks. As the number of trucks on the road increases, there's more trucks than there is freight to haul, rates go down.
Because there's more competition, people have to take a pay
they're bidding
cut
against each other.
Yep. A lot more competition means
or when freight volume goes up, the shippers are fighting for trucks, and so that causes freight rates to go up. They're competing against the trucks, freight rates go up. So that's kind of really how supply and demand, for the most part, works in the trucking industry. So here's where I kind of want to take a little bit of a step back in time. We all remember March 2020 when...
What happened? Why?
There was this little thing called COVID. Somebody ate a bat. I don't know exactly what happened. Somebody ate a bat, and all of a sudden the whole world's getting sick and everybody's dying.
I should not laugh, because that was I laughed through the trauma, Chris. Okay, it
was traumatic. So we all remember that. That happens, and it changes our world, right? Because you've got. Let's talk about some of the economic factors that happen here that really caused some turmoil within the trucking world. Because now all of a sudden you think about this, the world shuts down and people get, essentially shut in their homes. You can't go anywhere. So all of us that had been traveling, you have all this money that we're spending on airfare. You've got this money we're spending on hotels, experiences, doing things all across the country. All of a sudden we can't spend that money anymore, right? Because we can't travel. And we're stuck in our homes. So what do we start doing?
Ordering
We go online and we start buying stuff. And so we're starting, instead of spending that money on travel and other things, we're spending that money on products that need to be produced, that need to be delivered to our houses. And so now all of a sudden you've got all this freight all across the country that's moving more so than there ever had been before.
So that green line is going way up.
And the number of trucks right away is not changing. And so those freight rates are just going crazy. They're going up, 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 and up. And then you compound that and you make that even worse by all of a sudden you've got all this money that the government's injecting into the U.S. in the form of stimulus packages so that the economy doesn't tank. And so now all of a sudden a bunch of consumers, we now have more money to spend. But we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. And we're Americans. We like to spend our money. And so...
not you, Mr. Never buy that pickup truck.
I don't know. I still spend money sometimes. And so you've got all this money getting injected into the system. And nowhere, people can't travel yet. They still can't do anything. So we're just buying stuff. And it just causes the freight market to go insanely good for trucking companies.
Right. So do you remember what it topped out at for you, per mile?
Per mile, it was over $3 a mile. We're making well over $3 a mile, and things are like awesome.
And that was before multiple trucks, right?
Yeah,
2020. So was it still one truck?
It was like if you remember when I started this whole thing, my plan was 1 year. I was going to drive for 1 year. My 1 year date was the 9th of April.
Oh, no way.
So I drove for like maybe 3 weeks still while COVID was going on. And then I got out of the truck at that point. And so, yeah, I was there for part of that as far as the driving goes.
Right. So,
and it was just one truck.
So at this point, you had a plan already before COVID ever hit. You had this plan. You were going to buy more trucks and expand and hire drivers. But then, as we've talked about in previous episodes, when the freight market starts going nuts like that, people's eyes get pretty big and they go, wait, whoa, I want a piece of that.
I want in.
Right?
Yeah.
I want a piece of that. So more companies started popping up, or is it either, or is it and that more companies and owner operators started popping up, or the big guys started buying more trucks, building up their fleets?
Both start happening.
Right.
So you've got more new entrants coming into the market, more people starting trucking companies, and you have the existing trucking companies expanding their fleets and getting more trucks. And so, everybody's trying to capitalize on this really, really strong freight market. And that kind of goes really well for about 1 year. And you're making, really good money for about 1 year. And then roughly around March of 2021, that kind of starts to, or excuse
21 or 22.
22. So
yeah, I was going to say it was a couple of years.
almost kind of two really good years. I've got my years wrong. So you have almost 2 really good years. And then March of 2022, you kind of get to the point where enough trucks have entered the market at this point that you start to see a shift and the freight rates start to come down. And they don't come like crashing down all in one instance, but you start to see rates dropping. And then they steadily decrease. You still have more truck coming in at that point. I don't know exactly when the number of trucks started decreasing, but it didn't happen right when freight rates started dropping. It took a little bit of time, but you had a steady decline in freight rates from, essentially March's, we'll just call it spring of 2022 until the spring of 2024, just this steady drop to where freight rates got really low. And then the spring of 2024, they just kind of flattened out.
Right.
And for that year, that next year till the spring of this year, 2025, you just kind of had this bottoming out flat. You've had a ton of companies in that 2-year period go out of business, especially that last year of it. Trucks just started, going out of business like crazy.
Did you have a sense, by the way, at the time or now, if a lot of those companies that were dropping like flies, if they were the new ones that had just come in, or if it was kind of everybody got hit?
Everybody got hit. You even had a really big YRC that was like a 30, I want to say like a 30,000 truck fleet, huge fleet, go out of business. Like you had both, but definitely most of the ones that went out were those new entrants, because they hadn't really had a chance to establish themselves in the industry super well. And we even were, as a fairly relatively new company, like we struggled. We, as everybody knows, like we've felt that. And you've had this last year where everything's just kind of, rates have held steady, but you've still had some trucks going out of business. But I think if you look on that graph, we've got where those two lines meet each other is where there's an equilibrium. And that equilibrium happens when you've got the same amount of trucks, the right amount of trucks you need to handle the volume of freight that is out there.
Yeah.
So you've got kind of this 1-to-1 match. There's one truck for every truckload of freight on the market.
And that's where you want to be as a market, right?
That's where I don't know that's necessarily where, it depends on what side of the market you're on.
Sure.
I will call it, that's probably the space where the market's the most stable. Like everybody's doing well, maybe not fantastically well, but
everybody's got work.
Everybody's got work. The rate is probably the most fair it's going to be for a shipper and for a carrier as it can get. That's like a good, healthy market.
You mentioned the word stability. If I'm a business owner, like, hey, I'll take the years of plenty, right? Yeah. As you early on in the show, you used the Joseph of Egypt and all that, right? The years of plenty. All right, this is great. But am I wrong in thinking that as a business owner, I want stability?
Absolutely.
I want predictability. So even if I'm not making money hand over fist the way I was in late 2020, I'm still like I'm making money, and I have a good idea of what I'm going to be making next month and next year, right?
So I would say that's the point where everybody's making a healthy profit. You're not making ridiculous profits like the trucking folks were in the year after or the year or two after COVID, but shippers are making a healthy profit. Trucking companies are making a healthy profit. Everybody's stable. And that's kind of where you kind of want to be. And I don't know that the market's at that point right this very second, but there's signs that it's getting there. I think we're probably really close to an equilibrium as far as the number of trucks and freight. But I think the actual freight rates kind of lag that a little bit, right?
Okay.
So freight rates haven't really come up to meet that equilibrium point, but I think we're getting there. And here are some of the signs that I think we're seeing that show that we're in an equilibrium and that things are going to get better. In the past, you've got these little like test time periods. And I'm going to use Memorial Day, the 4th of July, and the DOT Blitz Week that happens in May,
right?
As an example of this. you take the DOT Blitz Week in May. There are drivers that are like, I don't even want to mess with getting pulled into a port, the increased likelihood that that's going to happen. I don't want to drive this week. You actually have that happen more than you think. And so what happens if you think about the supply and demand model, you've got a reduction in the number of trucks on the road, because let's say it's just 10% of the drivers just say, hey, I'm not even going to mess with it. I'm not going on the road. So now you have a 10% reduction in the number of trucks, which if the market is in a perfect equilibrium as far as the volume of trucks to the volume of freight, is now going to create higher competition for trucks, which is going to increase
the
freight rates.
Right.
And we saw that happen this year. We saw that happen over Memorial this year.
Well, hang on. Similar story with Memorial Day, 4th of July vacations, right?
Yep.
Now, in the year of our Lord 2025, did you feel like you were seeing rates go up and, hey, this is great? Or did you feel like rates were going up and it's like, oh, finally, this is what it's supposed to, equilibrium is supposed to look like. This is a normal rate, not a huge rate, right?
Well, as far as it's normal in a normal market condition, that's what you would expect to see. As far as the increase in rates, it was a good enough of a bump that you're like, oh, this feels good. Like you're getting 10 to 20 cents a mile more for, loads that occurred during that time period.
Right.
We hadn't seen those bumps, which are normal bumps in the freight market over the last 2 or 3 years, because there's been so much excess capacity with trucks that the excess capacity has been able to absorb the reduction in people staying off the road because of the DOT safety blitz or going on vacation because of Memorial Day and 4th of July. So in the last couple of years, the market's had so much excess capacity, it's been able to absorb those when those events occur. But this year, because there isn't excess capacity and we're more at that 1-to-1 ratio, it hasn't been able to absorb it, and so there's been an increase in rates.
I see what you're saying. So in previous years, there were spikes, but they were bumps more than spikes, if they even occurred.
I would say in previous years, as in like prior to COVID.
Oh, I see.
You would see those bumps.
Right.
But during
2023,
post-COVID, when the market started to go down again,
yeah,
because there were too many trucks on the road, that's really what has caused this bad freight market over the last 3 years. Too many trucks on the road.
It's an overcorrection from the COVID years.
Yes, it's not because freight volumes have gone down. Freight volumes have been fairly consistent over the last 3 years. The reduction in freight rates has almost exclusively been because of the high number of trucks on the road. Post-COVID, there's just got to be way too many trucks. And so there's excess capacity. There's more trucks on the road than there is freight to haul.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think what's happening now, just this year, just within the last, 3 or 4 months, maybe not even that much, is you're finally getting back to that 1-to-1 ratio when there's the right number of trucks to the right number, the right amount of freight being hauled. And then when you have these little short-term changes, like the Blitz and Memorial Day and the 4th of July, when the number of trucks go down on the road, you've got an increase in freight rates because shippers still need their stuff hauled, but there's not as there's temporarily not as many trucks on the road because of people staying off the road because of the safety blitz or going on a large number of people going on vacation because of a holiday.
Gotcha. So is the upshot of all this then that you think the future is brighter?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you've been saying that for a while. I mean, you've been saying for like 2 years, like, oh gosh, I feel like the market's about to crack. Oh, we're almost there. And then it continued to be really rough, especially through 2024 and maybe the first part of 25. But are you more confident now?
I'm more confident because we're actually seeing signs. Like I've been optimistic that the market's going to change, and because you just think it can't last forever. But
right.
It's lasted way longer than I think anybody's anticipated, than anybody would have expected. But now we're actually to me, that is a clear, solid sign that things are changing. And so what I think we have to look forward to is every year in fourth quarter, even the last 3 years, freight volume goes up in the fourth quarter because you're shipping a lot of stuff for Thanksgiving. You're shipping a lot of stuff for the holidays, the presents, the gifts. Like consumption in that fourth quarter goes way up. Freight volume always goes up. And freight volume's gone up in the last 3 years during those quarters, but there's been so much excess capacity with trucks that it's been able to absorb that increase in freight volume.
Right.
But this year, where it feels like we're more like under normal conditions, a 1-to-1 ratio, when that freight volume goes up and the number of trucks hasn't changed, it can't change that fast. Like freight volume can change really quick. The number of trucks on the road can't adjust at the same speed as freight volume.
Right.
And so in the fourth quarter, you're going to have the same number of trucks roughly, but freight volume going up, which should cause freight rates to go up. Gotcha. We should see that. Like I'm more optimistic that we're going to see that normal fourth quarter bump in rates that we should see, that we really haven't seen as you normally would the last 2 or 3 years.
Right. Okay. So with all of this in mind, Chris, here's the money question. And I have not prepped you with this, so you're on the spot here. But the question on, I think, a lot of people's minds listening to this right now, especially the employee drivers out there, is, so what does that mean for me? If I want to start my company, and, it is now the right time to do it? Or, hey, if everybody's thinking like me and like, oh, things are stabilizing again, I'll get into the game. Well, that throws it out of whack again, and I'm just going to be out of my ass in 6 months, whatever.
That's a great question. And what I would say at this point is I'm going to refer you back to episode 181. I think it was 181, yeah. The one where we just kind of answered that question. And there's 4 triggers that I talked about of when you should start a trucking company. One of them was when the freight market gets better.
Right. I think it's not the only one.
It's not the only one. And I think the freight market's moving in the right direction. How quickly that'll happen, how much that'll happen is really, really hard to predict. So I would say the better triggers are the first 3 that I talked about. And if you don't know what those triggers are, go back and listen to that episode again.
Chris, I need a diploma. I need to give you a diploma or a trophy. You are a content creator now. I've done it. I made you a content creator before you ever made me a trucker. You just referred to, you're forcing people to go back and listen to other content. Yeah. Amazing. Tip of the cap.
I learned from the best, Craig.
That's right. All right. So anything else on this topic that you want to run through or that you want people to be aware of?
The market's hard to predict. There's other factors that can change things. You never know. But I am more optimistic than I have been in a long time. We're seeing these signs little by little. I'm pretty confident, not 100%, but I'm pretty confident we're going to see a good fourth quarter this year.
So our next episode is going to be the July 2025 financials. We had the 4th of July vacation week in there. So I'm hoping to see some green numbers in there, Chris.
Me too.
We look forward to that. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening. Again, HaulinAssetsLLC.com, MotorCarrierHQ.com, and don't forget, like I did, HaulinAssetsAcademy.com, where you can learn all these skills that we talk about, oh gosh, how do I handle dispatching? What do I do about this and that and the other? There's a bunch of courses there, HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. Go check them out. You can self-teach yourself. That was a sentence right there. Through all these issues. So, Chris, thanks for coming in.
Good to be here.
And everybody else, thanks so much for listening. And we will see you for July financials in a couple weeks.
See you then.